Welcome back to Let's Talk to Animals, the podcast all species can enjoy together. My name is Shannon Cutts. I am an animal sensitive and intuitive, a Reiki Master practitioner, and an animal communication teacher with animallovelanguages.com. And for our purposes here today, I am also your friendly neighborhood hostess and guide through the wild, wise, and wonderful world of interspecies communication. Call me crazy, but I truly believe that animal communication has the power to save, heal, and restore our planet for all species to enjoy and share. When we learn to communicate with one another, we begin to realize we are so much more alike than different. We care about each other. We become friends. On this podcast, we talk about what the animals have to say and share, and why our pets truly are our partners, empathic friends, and teachers. I am so glad you have joined us here for this fresh new episode of Let's Talk to Animals. So let's dive in. Welcome back to Let's Talk to Animals, the podcast all species can enjoy together. I am your friendly neighborhood hostess, Shannon, and I'm a professional animal intuitive, Reiki Master practitioner, and an animal communication teacher with animallovelanguages.com. And today I've got some powerful, jaw-dropping stories for you about one of the biggest areas of focus in my professional practice, as well as my ongoing learning journey in how to work with your pet's energy to support them through anything. This is a topic that we've been talking a lot about here on the podcast lately. Why is that? Because this is where I feel the animals leading me, wanting to talk about the superpower of energetics, wanting to talk about the deeper soul level layers of the bonds that we share with them, and wanting to talk about lessons that they can teach us about what is really possible when we harness energy as a tool, as a support, as a guide, as a teacher, as a helper to make our life together clearer, calmer, more healing and beneficial, and also really educational. And you're going to hear that in today's episode. We are talking about pet Reiki. Now, before we get started, I am going to be sharing some pretty powerful transformational stories from my own Reiki practice. So when I mean I have a Reiki practice, a pet Reiki practice, it means I've been attuned to the master level as a Reiki energy practitioner. And it means that I am using Reiki as a tool to support pets physically, mentally, emotionally, relationally, and at the soul level. So if you're new to pet Reiki, if you're new to Reiki, period, then I want to start with a bit of a foundation, just so you understand what I'm talking about and get a sense of how the process works. Reiki was received by Dr. Mikao Usui in the 1920s. The doctor grew up in a wealthy Buddhist family. He was on a soul path, a spirit path. He felt this inner tug, this inner pull that he was supposed to bring something into the world, a deeper layer or level of healing, if you will. And so he underwent some pretty stringent spirit practices, meditating, fasting, going on retreat, soul searching, seeking guidance within. And after an extended period of these spirit-led practices, seeking to understand his calling, seeking guidance about next steps, he began to perceive a series of Sanskrit symbols. And these Sanskrit symbols became the building blocks of what today is a worldwide energetic healing and wellness discipline known as Usui Reiki. Now, when Usui Reiki first became a codified system, back when Dr. Usui Usui was alive, he taught it only locally and he taught it hands-on. And he trained more than 2,000 students during the time period that he was working with and developing this download that he had been given. And then he began passing it along to others, students who took the Reiki training that Dr. Usui had given them and began to add their own wisdom to it and their own insights to it. And it has continued and continued and continued, and it has become a worldwide practice. I was first Reiki attuned, and let me pause for just a moment and explain what that means. Reiki practitioners have two different levels of learning that we go through. One level is what we might call the intellectual track, to understand the history, to have that respect for the lineage, to understand the different branches of Reiki as it's practiced today, and to understand the foundations of how Dr. Usui and later Mrs. Takata, who was one of his principal students, took Reiki out into the West so that it would reach people like you and me. So that's the intellectual track. There are handbooks and manuals. There are different ways of teaching it, and there are different protocols that can be used for different situations. And then there's what we call the process of spirit awakening, energy awakening, and that is called attunement. And when a practitioner in training is attuned, you are attuned to 3 levels, and you get to decide where you start and where you want to go with it. I am attuned in all 3 levels. The first level of attunement allows the practitioner to offer Reiki locally. When you add the second layer, that adds the distance transmission component. And when you add the master level, that adds the teaching component to it. So I chose to go through all 3 levels, and I'm going to unpack why here in just a moment. This is a process whereby an attuned Reiki Master practitioner transmits the Reiki energy via the symbols and in an energetic installment into the energy or the auric field or the soul blueprint, if you will, of the practitioner in training. So there is this 2-part component to every Reiki practitioner's training and unfoldment, if you will. So there's this very logical, analytical side, which equips the practitioner with tools and structure and a sense of history and respect and reverence and ethics and boundaries, so that if that practitioner would like to share Reiki with others, some practitioners are simply attuned for their own benefit and the benefit of their immediate family members. Some want to work in a more public setting, either as a volunteer or even professionally. And so that component is offered. And then there is this mystical, mysterious component. And when I was attuned back in my 20s, I had almost no concept of what was really taking place here. So that was a quarter century ago. And I'll be honest with you, back at that time period in my life, I was still very, very ill with anorexia and bulimia. I was having one meltdown after another. I was learning how to meditate. I was grasping at straws. I was working with mentors. I did not know which end of me was up. And so when the opportunity to experience a Reiki attunement came along, I said yes without really understanding what I was saying yes to, and really without the benefit of a supportive community around me of others who were experiencing this and were talking about it. And when our teacher mentioned that the next step after the attunement would be to offer the hands-on Reiki transmission to others, I was like, oh, I'm out. I don't know what the heck just happened here, but that is a little bit too close for comfort for me. That's where I was at that period of my life. And I will be honest, I kind of forgot about it. Kind of forgot I had been Reiki attuned until my father entered his end of life stage. And my best friend, who was an attuned Reiki master, who was volunteering as a Reiki hospice practitioner, she suddenly passed away. This was right around the time I was turning 50, and my father got very ill, and it became clear that he was entering his end of life phase of life. And one day I was over visiting him just after my best friend Marcy had passed away, and I was at my folks' house, and my father walked by, and I kid you not, those of you who are watching the video version, you will see exactly what happened. My hands picked themselves up, and they turned and they followed my dad as he walked down the hall. And it was at that moment in time when I recognized that two things had happened. Reiki had stepped back into my life in a very powerful way. Because of my previous attunement, I was able to recognize that it was reactivating. And this is my own personal lived experience, so I'm not asking you to believe or disbelieve what I'm about to share. But I felt my friend Marcy step in from the spirit side and offer me her energy and invite me to continue. This was right in the middle of COVID. It was a messy time, and finding anybody to attune me locally was not happening. Luckily, I belonged to an intuitive community at that point in my life. I was just taking my first steps into formally studying animal communication after recognizing that it had been happening to me sort of subconsciously for some years. And I share that story in a different episode of this podcast series that I will link up for you in the show notes if you're curious. But a whole bunch of subtle signs and information and experiences and memories just all presented themselves to me. And it was like looking at a tapestry from the back end where it's all messy, and somebody came along and turned it around so that I could see the front and the beautiful design that all those threads had created. And I was like, oh, okay. So if you're in a phase of your life where you're feeling like you're looking at the back end of the tapestry yourself, I want you to know that that's good news, because there's something really beautiful that's being created. And maybe you just don't have all of the pieces in place to be able to perceive it. It's coming. Just stay the course. I was very blessed that some of my friends in this intuitive community that I had stepped into directed me to a remote teacher who was willing to attune students and guide and teach students over Zoom. And it was just as effective, just as powerful as I remembered from a quarter century ago. So remember, I've had the in-person attunement. I've also had the distance attunement. This time I went to level 3. When I was in my 20s, I was attuned to 1 and 2. This time I went to level 3. But my motivation for doing it wasn't actually to work with other humans that weren't family members. It wasn't even to work with animals professionally. I wasn't even a professional animal communicator yet at that time. My single solitary focus was using the Reiki to support my dad. And it was all hands on deck. It was boots on the ground, because he was getting sicker and sicker and sicker. And before I knew it, with very little opportunity to even really dialogue with my own mentor and Reiki Master teacher, I found myself in the hot seat transmitting Reiki to my dad several times a day to help him deal with the palliative care medications and his end of life symptoms. And I had some extremely powerful experiences and was very lucky that the lead hospice nurse on my dad's palliative care team for his in-home care was attuned as a Reiki level 2 practitioner. So I was able to talk with her and share the experiences that I was having of how Reiki was allowing me inside my dad's energetic world when he would have symptoms, when he would have what seemed to be emotional meltdowns, but from his coma could not communicate with us to words. Just being in his energetic space and being open to that, I was able to receive his guidance from within, not unlike what you might have heard if you've been listening to the telepathy tapes and you've listened to some of the accounts of nonverbal humans and how they've been able to telepathically communicate with their caregivers or their partners about what they want and need, even from states of profound Alzheimer's, profound autism, profound dementia. In my dad's case, he was in a coma, and Reiki became a mainstay. And I saw one miracle after another, after another, after another. And I was going through my whole formal animal communication learning journey at the same time I was going through my Reiki reattunement and formal learning journey. So this was a very powerful, very emotional, very chaotic time. And coming out of that, I developed a deep trust in Reiki. From the moment I became reattuned, I felt this powerful love coursing through me. And what was so amazing was that my best friend, my late best friend, Marcy, and I used to talk about that love. I loved hearing her stories of the experiences she had working as a hospice volunteer, specifically transmitting Reiki. And I thought, this is so beautiful. And every time she would share stories with me, I would feel this love. And what was so fun is part of the attunement part of the process is memorizing the symbols that are used to work with the Reiki energy. And memorization has never been my strong suit. If I don't use it every day, I'm pretty reliable. I'll be able to lose it. And I looked at those complicated symbols and I thought, whoa, this is going to be a major stumbling block for me. And my wise teacher said to us, don't try to memorize them now. I'm going to attune you to the symbols first. And after I attune you, then let's memorize them. And what I discovered is that it was incredibly, ridiculously easy for me to memorize the symbols. And I've never had to even go back and refresh my memory about what they look like or how to draw them. They imprinted themselves on my heart and my spirit to the point where it felt like they entered my energy field and became a part of me. So why am I sharing all of this with you when we're talking about pet Reiki? Number one, for those of you who don't understand Reiki, what is it? How is it taught and transmitted? And where does its power come from? It's one part intellectual, it's one part mystical, and it's all parts love and trust. So when I go into a pet Reiki session, and I also offer people Reiki now, I have found that this can be very helpful. I've had pet parents come to me and say, I wish I could get a Reiki session for myself. And well, I can do that. We can definitely do tandem Reiki. And often, especially when we're dealing with emotional feedback loops or behavioral issues that are causing a lot of chronic stress for both you and your pet, having a tandem Reiki session is extremely beneficial. But what's most important to understand to give us a firm foundation and anchor us in for the stories I'm about to share with you, trust in the Reiki is not optional for these kinds of results. So the Reiki is unconditionally loving, supremely intelligent, and utterly benevolent. The Reiki will never do anything to cause harm. So when we are working with an energy at this level, we never know more than this energy about what is truly needed, what is truly in the highest and best good of whomever is receiving the Reiki transmission. We are the vessel, quite literally. Animal communication requires us to empty out as well, but where animal communication is going to make use necessarily of your unique life experience, background, memories, preferences, et cetera, the Reiki works best in a completely neutral, loving, clear channel. So not imposing self onto Reiki at any level. And practitioners who come into an experience of working at some level publicly with Reiki energy, transmitting it as a volunteer, transmitting it even with other family members of any species, transmitting it professionally as part of their calling and vocation. I've been through this too. Practitioners that find themselves getting weary, getting tired, getting stressed. This is an indicator that you're trying to help the Reiki. I've been through it too. So not sitting up on any pedestals here. This is how I know. And I've had these conversations with my Reiki master about this because at first I didn't know why I was getting tired. I didn't know why I was feeling depleted or resisting wanting to or being asked to offer the Reiki. So Reiki requires emptying out everything and showing up with the mindset and the heart set of, I'm here, use me, send me, allow me to be of service, work through me, no attachment. This is key. And I'm going to dive into my first story to highlight exactly what I mean. I have a longtime pet parent client named Claudia. When I first met Claudia, she came to me because her soul dog Tibet was in his end of life phase and she wanted to experience a joyful reunion through pet reincarnation. And so we began working together. And relatively quickly, Tibet showed up in the body of little mastiff puppy Remy. And it was so clear. I actually have a blog where I share Claudia and Tibet Remy's story, and I'll link that up for you in the show notes so you could get to know them a little better. I even have a video of Remy's identification and gotcha day, where Claudia brought a ball that had been Tibet's, and little puppy Remy grabbed hold of it, would not let his brothers and sisters play with it, would not let anybody else have it. It was so clear. You can hear her in the background saying, it's him, it's him. Well, Remy chose a body that had congenital joint issues, which can be present in some purebred dog lines and hybrid dog breed lines. And because he's a giant mastiff shepherd breed, these joint issues started showing up really early, before he was even 1 year old. By the time he was 8 months, it was clear that he was going to need surgery on his left rear patella, his knee joint. So that was a whole experience. And he had what veterinarians call a patella luxation. So there was this whole search. Claudia lives in Spain. She had to travel to Germany and Switzerland. We've been through a process, and I have been talking with Remy and transmitting Reiki for Remy at several key points throughout this procedure. Well, the latest news, this happened earlier this month. I received a panicked email from Claudia, and she said, we have an emergency. One of the pins that the surgeon put into Remy's leg to stabilize after the surgery has come loose and is now floating around in the soft tissues, and he's limping a lot. And she scheduled a Reiki session and said in the notes, I would like you to use the Reiki to stabilize the pin to make sure it doesn't move and cause any damage until we are able to get in for surgery to remove it. Now, I want to stop here for a moment and explain that traditionally, and in most of the research, which is still a little bit spotty to date, we could stand with some larger sample size studies of Reiki's benefits, but it's well enough recognized that it's used fairly ubiquitously throughout the world in a variety of situations where healing is required or is certainly recommended and beneficial. But Reiki's benefits primarily are focused at the level of activating the parasympathetic nervous system. So dialing down the setting on the sympathetic, the fight, flight, freeze, tender, befriend aspect of the nervous system that causes adrenaline and cortisol to flood the body, creating stress, creating anxiety, creating a lowered immune system function, creating inflammation in the body, basically making the body work harder to heal from anything that's going on, whether this is physical, emotional, mental, some combination thereof, or even soul level lessons, or what we might call a dark night of the soul or the hero's journey. So Reiki heads right to the parasympathetic nervous system, which is that rest, digest, and reconnect feature. Threat's over. You're safe. Nobody's coming to eat you for dinner. We're starting to detox from the adrenaline, from the cortisol, moving that out of the body, calming down the system, reducing inflammation, and reestablishing a deeper level of calm through which whatever aspect of us that needs healing and restoration can actually happen. So if you think of the sympathetic nervous system like the choppy waves on the surface, and the parasympathetic nervous system as that calm, still, deep water underneath, the Reiki head's there. There isn't a lot of data to support Reiki being used for the type of application that Remy's mom, Claudia, was asking me to use it for. And I was honest with her. And I said, Claudia, I hear you. And I want to let you know that I am absolutely willing to ask the Reiki guides to support Remy in this way. However, this is not traditionally what we might consider the optimal use of the Reiki. There isn't a lot of data or evidence to suggest that this sort of thing is a good fit working with surgical hardware. Would you still like me to do the session? And we have to remember here that Claudia and Remy have had Reiki several times through transmissions that I have sent to them. He has fallen asleep in her arms. He's always been able to find a deeper level of calm. So Claudia isn't coming into this as a brand Reiki newbie, having no idea about any possible benefits. She has experienced other benefits. So when she wrote me back, she said, I understand. I know that there are no guarantees, and I still want you to do the session. So wait for it. I transmitted the session on a Monday, and on Saturday, I got a message from Claudia, and she said, now here's a story for you. Yesterday morning, I suddenly saw one tiny speck of blood coming out of the area where the pin in Remy's leg was supposed to be. I was panicking for a moment, as yesterday was Friday. His surgery to remove the pin was planned for Monday, but I immediately called the local vet, and he said, bring him now and we'll take out the pin. 3 hours later, I received a call that Remy is okay, but the surgeon said he couldn't find the pin. And he said, it must be somewhere in our house. And she said she didn't understand what the vet was saying. And he said, yeah, so we did an x-ray before. We looked everywhere in Remy's tissues. This is a 2-inch long, a 5-centimeter long steel pin, and they could not find it anywhere in Remy's tissues. So the surgeon was saying Remy's body must have thrown it out. She said, Shannon, you've seen the photo of the pin in Remy's leg, and I'll link that up for you in the show notes too, so you can actually see it. How could it have flown out of Remy's leg and cause only one drop of blood? And she said, my partner and I were looking everywhere in the house. We were searching the garden, looking high and low, but it's like searching for a needle in a haystack. So finally we gave up and we went to bed. And she wrote to me, she said, this morning in my own sleepy state, I went to the living room, and there the pin was right in front of my eyes, clean and like new. It was on the floor, and we were as happy as if we had won the lottery. It is absolutely incredible. And I am aware that it prevented the possible scenario of a complicated extraction, as the vets all said. The sciatic nerve was a bit at risk in case the pin had migrated close to it. I am very sure that the Reiki has been a substantial part and trigger of it. I am so thankful for this. So while we will never know exactly why Remy's body ejected the pin in a single flying leap with only one speck of blood, there is a scientific principle known as Occam's razor. This is one of the principles I teach from when I teach animal communication. And it says, all else being equal, the simplest explanation tends to be the right one. And in this particular case, even the veterinary surgeons, even the specialized traumatologist that was overseeing Remy's surgery had no reasonable medical explanation for what happened. We look back and we say, what was the chain of events leading up to it? What was the intention that we set? When I teach my intuitive development for pet parents workshop, we work very powerfully with setting intentions. Where do we want to go in our pet's healing journey? And the intention that Claudia and I had set was to make sure that no area inside Remy's leg was harmed by the presence of the migrated pin. And my part was being willing to ask my Reiki guides for support, to ask them for a miracle, and to show up and offer the transmission, having no attachment, because I deeply and wholeheartedly trust that Reiki will do whatever is in Remy's highest and best good. That is what Reiki is capable of. And as I shared, I've experienced these kinds of miraculous transmissions, both with people and also with your pets. But the key is the practitioner shows up with willingness and with zero attachment and with unconditional trust in and acceptance of however the Reiki chooses to work in that other individual's life, the recipient's life. So I'm not coming in trying to force it. I'm not coming in trying to do something. I am showing up, opening up, and quite literally becoming a vehicle for this unconditionally loving, infinitely wise, and utterly beneficial, powerful energy source to offer whatever is best for that recipient. Of course, we're delighted. These are wonderful results. And Claudia was kind enough to allow me to share Remy's photos and to share Remy's story. So I'll link up a photo of Remy and a picture of that danged pin below so you can check it out with your own eyes. It's a long pin and it's very sharp and it's pretty amazing. So that might seem like an isolated incident. And the argument could be made that even if it's the only Reiki miracle that I personally have experienced, or the only documented Reiki miracle ever in the history of Reiki practitioners, it's still enough to offer Reiki a seat at the conversational table when we're taking a look at what would best serve your pet as they're walking through life challenges, whether they be, again, physical, mental, emotional, relational, or soul level, hero's journey level experiences. But that's not the only miraculous Reiki experience that I've had in my pet practice to date. So I want to share another story with you. This story is the story of Pudding. When I met Pudding, Mom Claire reached out asking for a pet Reiki session because Pudding had been diagnosed with cancer. She had a tumor and she was entering into her second round of chemotherapy. Pudding is a tiny little poodle mix. She's 11 years old and she was very frail, very fragile. And so when Mom Claire reached out, she shared with me that she had developed a serious infection on her little belly and in her urinary area, and she didn't even want to walk. She was in a lot of pain and she was very stressed out and had no energy. And Claire shared that she wasn't sure exactly why. Was it the tumor that was causing all of these symptoms that she was seeing? Was it the medicine? Was it both? The good news about Pet Reiki is that we don't need to know that in order to offer Pudding support. Reiki doesn't require for us to even know what's going on. It's always nice to know because, as you just experienced with the case of Claudia and Remy, having some information about what's going on specifically, especially what may be prompting you as a pet parent to specifically reach out to me and ask for a pet Reiki session, I can then share that request with the Reiki guides that I work with. I can share that request with the benevolent wisdom that is the Reiki energy stream. I can ask. And as long as I'm not attached and I accept that the Reiki knows best, then this information is a nice to have. In this particular case, Claire was willing to share some details, and I was very aware that Pudding had these very sensitive and painful infectious lesions on her body that were turning bloody, that she didn't want to walk, that she didn't have any energy, that she was very stressed out. And so as I enter into the Reiki session, setting the intention and asking and having that conversation with my Reiki guides, I can ask. So that's exactly what I did with Pudding. What was so beautiful is that Pudding's Reiki session was on June 19th. And it took about a week before I heard back from Mom Claire. So I heard back from her about 8 days later. And she wrote to me, I'm going to share exactly what she wrote. She said, apologies for the late reply. Thank you for your tips, for passing along a special message from Pudding. There was a message that was included along with the Reiki transmission that I received from her. I can't describe how much it means to me. I read it over and over and I tear up every time. It's been a week since the last healing session and Pudding has improved significantly. Her skin, which was inflamed, burning, and bloody, is now much better. The vet had prepared us for the worst given her pain and lack of quality of life. Yesterday, she walked voluntarily for 30 minutes and most of her skin is turning baby pink. So here again, given the prognosis that we walked into Pudding's Reiki session with, we have what we can only describe as a potential miracle, such a rapid turnaround. And while we don't have any hard and fast data or test results to support that it was a direct line to the Reiki transmission, here again, in lieu of anything that would outright contradict that, I like to go back to Occam's razor. All else being equal, the simplest explanation tends to be the right one. And the simplest explanation here is that a very unconditionally loving, high vibration, benevolent energy source that wants only the very best for every soul, every embodied soul that it interacts with, intervened because Mom Claire asked it to. And here's the key, both with Claudia, with Claire, and also with myself as a practitioner, we're coming from a place of empathic love. We're just asking for help. That's the foundational activator for Reiki. We have to become willing to ask for help. This is so difficult for us as pet parents, especially because we feel like we're sitting in the hot seat for our pet's care. And because typically, as we're having conversations with traditional practitioners, veterinary experts, surgeons, oncologists, orthopedics, and other Western track trained practitioners, often these kinds of things don't even come up. They don't even get a seat at the table. We're just looking at treatment and healing through a different lens, not less valid, but maybe not inclusive enough. I'm not in any way, shape, or form diminishing all of the value that these Western track experts have brought into, for instance, both Remy's and Pudding's life, but simply reflecting that they have a full-time job on their hands just becoming experts in their field. So where would they find the extra time? Most of the time, these experts, these practitioners aren't going to have a whole lot of free time to go and explore the complementary side. They've got their hands full staying up to date on the latest cutting edge scientific and surgical and medical and pharmacological interventions that can be offered to support us, to support our pets. So it's up to us as pet parents to take a step back and take a look at the bigger picture of what else can we add in to provide that deeper level of energetic, emotional, and parasympathetic nervous system support, recognizing that we can offer the latest cutting edge, this, that, and everything else. But if our pet's immune system is so compromised, if the sympathetic nervous system is so overactive that it is actually producing its own level of inflammation in the body, even as the body is trying to heal from other impacts, we're kind of stacking the whole deck against our pets' healing, against our own healing, if we're the ones in the healing hot seat. So it's asking the question, what else can we add to actually support the outcome that we're working so hard towards? And becoming willing to take a moment, stepping outside of crisis mode, which I am right there with you when my pets are in crisis. I have exactly the same initial knee-jerk reaction. It's just I have a little bit more training sometimes and perspective because I get to work with your pets as well and hear their stories and be able to share some of these amazing stories with you. I can take those extra couple steps back and ask, is there anything else I can add in? Is there anything else we can add in that can ensure that all of the healing potential that is possible for our beloved pets, our partners, empathic friends, and teachers can be accessible to them, can be accepted by them, incorporated, and used for their highest and best good. And so becoming willing as pet parents to realize asking for additional help, for instance, reaching out to me and asking for a pet Reiki session for your pet, it doesn't indicate that you have missed the mark with everything that you've been doing. It doesn't indicate that you're failing them because they're not recovering or they're not recovering well enough. So often we feel like, but I've done everything. I've tried everything. And what am I doing wrong? And the pets have emphasized over and over and over again that when they go through something at the soul level, which is where animal communication and pet Reiki shines, at the soul level, we have soul agreements together. We are in one another's lives for reasons that relate to not just day-to-day support, love, joy, comfort, all of those wonderful things, but soul level growth. And so when your pet goes through something at that soul level, they're acting as your partner, empathic friend, and teacher. And it's happening for you both. For you, yes. For them, yes. We all come into these 3D physical bodies here at Earth School because of two reasons. This is what the pets have taught me. Number one, we have something we want to learn. Doesn't mean we're imperfect. It doesn't mean we're a new soul. We might be, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. It means our bread is buttered on the side of having certain experiences that would evolve our understanding and further open our hearts. For many of your animals, it's because they're doing important work on the soul side and the etheric realm with other animals, preparing them to keep company with humans. And they need to have experiences of what it's like and what their mentees, their pet mentees, are going to experience so they can guide them through it. So these experiences are so important. We also come in because we have something to teach. So in many cases, our pets are teaching us about tools that we can also benefit from and might never find the time, the openness, or the courage to ask for any other reason other than that our pet desperately needs support. And we become willing to try anything. Just like I was when my dad was so ill. I was like, just use me. Just show me what to do. I'll do anything. I'll do anything. Same thing with my animals. It would help my Petal to heal, or my Maltese, or my Io, or our dog Flash Gordon. If it would help them heal for me to stand out on the front lawn in a pink tutu and twirl around, I would do it. You could probably relate to that. So we have to recognize asking for support, asking for help. It doesn't mean that you've made an admission of failure. You're failing forward, if anything, because that's how we learn. So failure is almost a non-issue. That's definitely not an accurate description of what's really happening. And sometimes it's that one more thing that we become open to or willing to try that turns the corner. So all we have to do is continue to be willing to try new things. For our animals, recognizing if I haven't found it yet, whatever it is, if we're not at our destination yet of wherever we're going together, and that's a topic for a whole other podcast. But if we haven't arrived yet, then there's more to learn. There's more we have to learn from one another and to teach each other. So let's keep going. We're only one no, that didn't work away from yay, yes, we found the thing. So keep going and consider giving Reiki a seat on your pet's whole pet wellness, healing, and quality of life team. I am very, very well known in my student community for saying modern pet parenting takes a team. We are bombarded, literally overwhelmed, almost drowning in too many advances and too much information. And we definitely need a team of trusted mentors, practitioners, and supporters, and friends, pet parent friends, fellow communicators, for those of you who are walking the animal communication path with me or elsewhere. We need a team. They need a team. So we're in the hot seat to build their team, not to do it all for them ourselves. And that feels like a really good place to leave you today, is with an invitation to consider, does Reiki have a seat? Are you open to adding Reiki into your pet's whole pet wellness and healing and care and quality of life team? And if you are, then I am going to link up in the show notes below how to schedule your pet's Reiki session. I would love to hear your questions about pet Reiki, about people Reiki. I would love to hear your aha moments and your stories. So if you have enjoyed today's episode, if you found it intriguing or enlightening, please do take just a moment to share your experiences in the form of a comment or a review or a choice to become a supporter of Let's Talk to Animals. I also look forward to seeing you back here in 2 weeks for a fresh new episode of Let's Talk to Animals, the podcast all species can enjoy together. And I'm sending you and your pet family here and in spirit all my love. Bye for now. I have so enjoyed sharing this episode with you. If you're new to the Let's Talk to Animals community and you've enjoyed this episode, please do leave us a review on your favorite streaming service or drop a comment wherever you like to listen. I love to hear from you, and your feedback truly helps me shape future episodes based on your interests and needs. If you're not already in my weekly Love Letters community, head over to animallovelanguages.com to opt in. Your welcome email will include $25 off your first pet session with me, and you'll be the first to know when a new podcast episode drops. If you're interested in learning more about the work I do communicating with animals, offering pet Reiki, and teaching animal communication, please visit me at animallovelanguages.com. Click on Schedule for Pet Sessions and Programs for all the information about my new Animal Communication Adventure to Mastery student program and the live animal communication practice circle I run for student practitioners. And I look forward to welcoming you back here very soon for a fresh new episode of Let's Talk to Animals. Okay, all my love. Bye for now.